Hello there, I'm Squishy from Wowhead, and this is my overview for the Horrific Vision of Stormwind. On this weekly reset, the Horrific Vision of Orgrimmar will swap over to Stormwind, and this means that there are going to be 5 new zones containing different creatures, abilities, and ways to fail your run. This guide will act as a quick overview of each zone, describing the most dangerous creatures, and sharing important notes to give you a leg up and hopefully reduce your chance of failure. Let's hop in. The first thing that we have to look at is the general layout of Stormwind. I'm going to use Sanghelios' image because it's absolutely amazing. This image is from the Horrific Vision of Stormwind guide on Wowhead, where he breaks down all the zones and the dangerous mechanics. I'll toss a link in the description below. Looking at this, just like in Orgrimmar, there are 5 zones: 2 corrupted areas, 2 lost areas, and the tainted area where you will defeat the final boss Illyria. When you port in, you'll also start in the tainted area, and you'll start directly next to the cathedral. And similar to Orgrimmar, if you're on rank 1 through 5 of the legendary cape quests, you can run into the cathedral and immediately kill Illyria for little risk. However, if you want to upgrade your cloak to rank 6 and 7, you'll need to at least hit the corrupted areas. In Stormwind, these corrupted areas are the Dwarven District, which is to the left of spawn, and the Trade District, which is straight ahead of spawn. The 2 lost areas in Stormwind are the Old Town and Mage Quarter, and generally take longer to complete than the Orgrimmar lost areas, so don't be discouraged if you don't clear as many zones as in Orgrimmar this past week. In the Horrific Vision of Stormwind, when you're transitioning between zones, there will be some corruption tumors, and occasionally an eye stalk in your way. The eye stalk will keep you in combat if you run by it, but the tumors will not. The tumors deal damage and slow you as you try to pass, but dealing damage to them reduces the radius of their goop. Similar to Orgrimmar, every time you clear a side area in Stormwind, a portal will appear near the end of each section, allowing you to click it to head back to the cathedral area and the start. And now, the quick disclaimers. Since this isn't live yet, we don't know what the madnesses are going to be this week, and if anything has changed since the PTR. The footage here is also from the PTR, and there are some bugs in the footage, such as a zone not draining sanity, or other weird things going on. This is just enough information to introduce you to each zone, and of course there will be more in-depth guides coming once they're on the live servers. The Dwarven District is up first, and as you approach the cathedral, the objectives are as follows. Defeat 3 gnomes outside the zone. Place 8 explosive bombs inside the zone. Detonate the explosives. And then defeat the final boss. The 8 explosives are unfortunately scattered around the area, and you'll need to pull the majority of the trash to plant them. Nothing in this area is particularly deadly except for the Forage Guard near the middle, so you can pull any groups of mobs together as long as you can survive their melee hits. Some quick notes about the Forage Guard. He will slow your movement speed by 20%, and only has 1 sanity draining ability, Entropic Leap. This forms a purple swirly on the ground that will drain sanity if he leaps on top of you. It'll be slightly harder to get out of because of the slow, but as long as you're paying attention, he can be chain pulled as well. The final boss of the Dwarven District puts bombs down on the ground that you probably shouldn't stand in, and he also has a frontal breath that you also shouldn't stand in. Fire's bad. Once you defeat the boss, a portal will open here if you wish to go back to the cathedral, otherwise, heading forwards will take you to the Old Town Lost Area and Mathias Shaw. The second zone we're covering is Old Town. Old Town is a deadly zone, with stealthy mobs, everyone's favorite Dominator stuns, and a really annoying boss fight. If there's a place to die in Stormwind, this is it. You'll want to be careful about pulling too many mobs at a time, especially since the stealthy mobs will apply a poison when they de-stealth, slowing you by a massive amount and making it very hard to dodge other abilities. When you first enter the zone, you'll automatically meet up with Illyria after a short amount of time, completing the first objective. Then, you'll need to obtain 2 keys from 2 different elites. Insert the keys into the key holders, and then defeat Mathias Shaw. Both the elites have straightforward mechanics, with clear visuals, which will drain sanity if hit. For Terranson, watch the Frontal Breath and Whirlwind-like ability. For Alxkov, make sure not to stand in the Shadow Ground. Between the elites is a long hallway where you'll deal with a bunch of different trash mobs, some of which are stealthed. Here's a quick tip. The SI-7 informants are actually Dominators in disguise. If you remember the Dominators from the Orgrimmar video, make sure to kick the Touch the Abyss cast or you'll get stunned for 6 seconds and potentially die. Clearing the Hallway of Doom and the 2 elites will lead you to a locked gate with 2 key holders. Assuming you have both keys, you'll need to place both of these into the keyholes simultaneously. Yes, simultaneously. If you're solo, Valera will automatically time her key with your click. However, if you're not solo and in a group, you and one other player will need to click the key holders at the exact same time to open the door. Make sure that you are communicating. Once the gate is open, it's time to present the very, very annoying boss fight, Mathias Shaw. His first annoying ability is his ability to vanish and become untargetable for a couple seconds. You'll have nothing to hit at these times, so sit back, watch your sanity bar drain, and dodge the swirlies he throws at you that are very, very easy to dodge. His second mechanic is the Eyes of Chaos. He'll start with one of these by his side and slowly increase the number as the fight progresses. The Eyes of Chaos do not need to be killed or damaged, and they periodically jump around the arena and only channel one ability, called Dark Glaze. If your character faces the eye casting Dark Glaze, it'll drain sanity on every tick. With 3 eyes out by the end of the fight, and the requirement to have Shaw in front of you in order to attack, you'll need to nail your positioning to get through this fight. A portal will spawn once Shaw dies, taking you back to the cathedral. Next up is the Trade District, the second corrupted zone. The objective of this zone is to defeat the Inquisitor, then defeat the Slave Master, then rescue 8 captives from cages. There's nothing really noteworthy about the trash in this area. You're welcome to pull however much you wish, as long as you can cleave it down and not die, so we're just going to focus on the bosses. The first objective requires dealing with the Inquisitor, and he can be found by heading left on the first intersection when coming from the cathedral. His first ability is Agonizing Torment, which can be interrupted. For every 1.5 seconds that he channels, you'll lose some sanity, and he casts it very often. You probably won't be able to avoid all of these, but interrupt all the channels that you can. Expect to lose at least some sanity from this mechanic. His second ability is Convert, and when this casts, this makes you immune to all healing and hostile to all allies for 30 seconds. If you're solo, this probably won't be an issue. However, if you're in a group, you'll have to be very, very careful about using cleave spells to avoid killing your teammates. Once the Inquisitor is dead, you'll now have to deal with the Slave Master. Once you pull him, while in combat, you'll periodically have a tentacle slam down on a clearly marked area. As usual, just don't stand in the bad. His main ability is cast at 80% and 55%, which will silence all players and drag them towards him. All you have to do during this is run away during this time, as you're being pulled. If you do manage to reach him, because you're not running away, he'll drain a massive amount of sanity. Make sure to continue dodging the tentacle slams during this time. And once the Inquisitor's dead, all you gotta do is just click all the cages, and you're done with the zone. And now, the final lost zone, the Mage Quarter. The Mage Quarter is a maze with many different routes and paths that you can take. Within this quarter are 5 void portals with a group of mobs guarding them. All of the void portals can be seen on the minimap, and defeating the mobs guarding it will destroy the portal. We're not covering route in this overview, but stay tuned for a future Mage Quarter guide where we'll go over the route that I use. At the bottom of the tower is an elite that constantly spews swirlies under your feet. You'll probably need to defeat him at some point because he's constantly in the way, but he isn't actually required. If you do pull him, Casters will have much fun with this creature, as you'll constantly need to move due to the constant barrage under you. Like a lot of other elites in Stormwind, he also has a frontal breath that you shouldn't stand in. Now, one of the main dangers of Mage Quarter is the fast-moving aberrations that patrol around the area, and there are quite a few patrols. If you ever need to drop a sanity orb in the Mage Quarter, you'll need to be very careful that no patrol comes by and puts you in combat. The patrols have very little health, but it's enough to delay your orb enough to make you sanity out. Okay, you've now closed all the void portals. Now what? Well, it's time to head up the tower and fight Magister Umbridge. This fight will drain a ton of sanity, especially if you're solo. His main ability is Entropic missiles, which can be interrupted, but will once again deal sanity damage for every second that it's being channeled. In addition, he requires another kick for his Tainted Polymorph cast, unless you want to wander around for 4 seconds doing nothing. His final ability occurs at set health points. At 80%, 45%, and 25%, he'll teleport to one end of the room and start to channel Frozen Storm. You'll need to make your way to him, dodging the frozen shards that are emanating out from him, and get in melee range to end the phase. In this clip, the madness for this week on the PTR prevented extended movements, making it take much longer than it would to cross usually. Unless this specific madness is active on live servers, you'll be able to just run straight at Umbridge and end the phase. Because of the constant teleporting and kicks that are required on this encounter, this fight takes a long time and you'll likely lose a lot of sanity. After defeating Umbridge, there's a portal to take you back to the cathedral. And finally, we're here at the last boss Illyria, and I'm going to start with the bad news. Illyria is probably more difficult than Thrall, and not nearly as much of a pushover, especially as you start adding the additional mechanics of the side zones. It's important to note that Illyria is a ranged archer, and she won't move unless you line of sight her casts. You'll understand why this is important later. Let's start off with her generic abilities. First one is Darkened Sky, which will summon a bunch of purple swirlies that deal damage and drain sanity to anyone hit. They tend to cluster, but you have more than enough time to find a safe spot. Illyria's other base ability is Void Eruption. She'll teleport to the middle and start a 7-second cast. You'll get a giant warning on your screen that tells you to hide, and you need to line of sight. There are a number of pillars for you to use, but if you're greedy and get hit, you'll take a massive 240 sanity damage. I wouldn't recommend risking getting hit by this ability. It's just not worth it. Similar to Orgrimmar, Illyria gains 10% health for each side zone that is completed, as well as a bonus ability. For completing the Dwarven District, Illyria gains the ability to drop explosive ordnance. These are bombs that are tossed near a player, have about a 10-second fuse, and then will explode and leave a patch of fire lasting for a very long time. Because the Illyria fight revolves so heavily around positioning, you'll want to bait these bombs to a wall if possible. However, if a bomb lands in a bad position, you're actually able to kick the bombs by clicking on them, similar to the bombs in the first boss of Motherlode. But generally, it's just much easier to bait them into a good spot. For completing the Old Town, Illyria now has an Eye of Chaos for the entire fight. You'll now have to do this entire fight while looking away from the eye. This is by far the most annoying bonus, as it has a strict positioning requirement, and you're not exactly able to move Illyria easily. When you run away from Void Eruption, make sure you continue facing away. For completing the Trade District, Illyria now has the Chains of Servitude ability. When she casts this, just make sure that you run away from Illyria and continue facing away from the eye. And lastly, for completing the Mage Quarter, Illyria can now cast Tainted Polymorph. As there's nothing else to interrupt on the Illyria encounter, this ability is actually very low impact. Just be sure to interrupt it. I think Stormwind is probably the harder of the two scenarios, but with enough practice and knowledge, it does become much easier. Other than in Old Town, there's a low chance of your health actually going to 0 in Stormwind, but a much higher chance of your sanity hitting 0. There's a lot of downtime on bosses which just rip through your sanity, and Illyria is just frustrating when you have to look away from the eye, line of sight, kick, and DPS the boss while she doesn't want to move out of fire. If you want a written overview of the Horrific Vision of Stormwind, make sure to check out Sanghelios' guide on Wowhead, which contains detailed information on each of the elites and zones. Also, be on the lookout for specific zone guides during this upcoming week. That's all for the overview of Stormwind. Thanks for watching.